2, 1. Let's go. Welcome to the Fiction Addiction Podcast, a podcast where we go one-on-one with fiction creators, such as authors, filmmakers, actors, songwriters, and more. Each episode, we get the inside scoop on our guests' creative process, the ups and downs of their industries, and our guests also give out tips and tricks that help them become successful. And now, let's jump into the episode with your host, Chris C.L. Lowry.
All right. Welcome back to the Fiction Addiction Podcast. My next guest was born and raised in my city, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and is a prolific children's author. Her deep passion for writing comes from her desire to see her 3 biracial children embrace both their Hispanic and African American cultures. There's no limit to her creativity as she sees beyond just writing good stories. She incorporates brilliant intuition and insight to make each piece of work unique and mostly important and purposeful. This proud mother of 3 is also a graduate of Gettysburg College with a bachelor's degree in sociology. Ladies and gentlemen, Melissa Montero. Melissa, what's going on?
Nothing much. I'm so excited to be able to tune in tonight and to participate. It's an honor. So thank you so much for having me.
Definitely. First and foremost, the COVID-19 coronavirus has created a global pandemic, and all of our worlds have been turned upside down. I can't even say turned upside down at this point. Turned upside down, putting the bottle shaking up.
Right.
So how has that pandemic impacted your life?
Oh gosh. It's been a roller coaster ride. It's been, I have, as you mentioned, I have 3 children, 8, 10, and 12. My husband and I work in the property management field. My husband works in a warehouse, so we're both considered essential workers. Never knew I was an essential worker until the pandemic happened. Didn't know I was that important. So I'm going to say, I trust God, and I believe that, myself, my husband, my family are covered. I believe that we will make it through this. I believe that we just have to, follow the advice and make sure we're washing our hands, keeping social distancing, doing those things that we're instructed to do, and just holding on to our faith and trusting that God will get us through this. So on that level, I'm good. I think the biggest thing for me right now is just trying to homeschool my 3 children. Like, I did not sign up to be a teacher. God bless the teachers.
Right.
So that is probably the biggest thing, because we're both working full time. So we're like shuttling shifts and trying to make sure that they're logged in and that their, work is done so that they can get it graded. And it's just been a time, as well as my poor pantry. These kids keep eating up all the food, eating
everything.
Yes.
Now, how has it been for the kids though? The homeschooling, have they? I'm sure in the beginning they thought it was gonna be like, we get to play all day, and then all of a sudden, hold on, here goes some schoolwork.
Yes, they definitely thought it was going to be sweet. They know their mothers. I don't know why they were sleeping. But my youngest is my daughter. She's 8, so she loves school. She misses her teacher. She's ready to go back to school. My middle son, Isaiah, he is 10. So he is the one, like you said, we doing homeschool. Let me get everything done in an hour. I'm just going to click, get this done, and then I'm going to hop on the and then my oldest, he is 12. So he's in middle school, and he's already kind of, by the time you get to middle school, at least out in Montgomery County, the kids have laptops. They're accustomed to doing their work online. They turn their homework in online. He knows how to grab his grades and let me know what he needs to do, what he doesn't need to do. So for him, he's good. But it's definitely, each child has their own personality with dealing with this, and the whole homeschool thing. So it's definitely been a process.
Now, obviously, that's been a challenge. But what's been one of the most surprising and positive things that you've witnessed during the pandemic? Obviously, all the social media stuff that's going on, all the celebrities, and you got DJ D Nice throwing the club
Yeah.
quarantine stuff, and a lot of stuff. What's been the most positive and surprising thing to you that has come from the pandemic and the quarantine rules?
I think the most positive thing that's come from it is really getting back to basics as far as, most people are so busy running, ripping and running, like that family time, that sitting down
Mm-hmm.
to dinner, that Sunday dinner, that, just really appreciating not only the people that live in our households, but also your other family members and your loved ones. Like a lot of people are reaching out to people more, whether it's social media, email, like just texting and checking in and saying, hey, how are you doing? And also getting back to the basics of faith and really taking that time now to really spend time with God and read and study and also to just explore really what your purpose is and what, what you are called to do in life. Like, I feel like now with this downtime, people are really kind of forced to reflect on what it is that they want to do with their life, what they're doing with their life, and really understanding just the purpose and a need to really know what you want to do, what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. Now, you mentioned you were an essential worker, but outside of that, you are a business owner. You know what I mean? You are an author. You run a business. You have a brand.
Right.
So how has the pandemic affected you on that side of being an entrepreneur and a business owner?
I guess it's kind of like a double-edged sword, dual purpose. Like for my business, I have an event coming up in June that I'm talking about bringing women together and collaborating. So right now I'm kind of at that stage where it's like I'm going to soon have to decide if we're going to go virtual, if we're going to postpone. So that for me is a big deal because I do have panelists that have confirmed. I've got vendors that have confirmed. So that's something that I'll be kind of rolling out which way that goes business wise. With my book, I have some speaking engagements that were scheduled at schools in May. So it's definitely affected me in that way, where it's kind of like, like you said, in a bottle upside down, turned around, shaken up. Like I was really pushing, to like get my things booked. I was reaching out to schools and, getting stuff lined up. And it's like, you just never know, you just never know. So, but on the flip side, it's allowing me time to really be more creative with my posting. Like all of my posts on social media, like I'm trying to be positive and just provide hope and then just stay before my audience and, just let people know, like, we'll get through this. Let them know that we're in this together. Let them know that, when we do get released, we're going to have an awesome time at this event. So be ready, get your,
right.
Get your purpose, get your business ideas together, get your questions together, know what you're going to ask, know what you're going to do, and just really take this time to work on building yourself up. So, it's been a roller coaster.
Now, obviously, that event you're mentioning, it is an event to get women that are involved in business together and networking. How has that been? Is this the first one, or have you had this type of event in the past?
I've done more. So I love planning events. We've done an event for our business, Mixed Essence, which we'll talk about a little later. But we did an event last year, kind of similar to this. This is my first event that I'm doing on my own that specifically targets women on this level. Like I do little events where we do like painting with a twist. We do like just gatherings together just to hang out and kind of break away from, our husbands, our kids, just get some time, girl time. It's necessary. Self-care. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So this is definitely one of the first events I've done on this level, specifically geared towards bringing business owners and women together. Yes.
Now, how has planning these events just opened your mind up in terms of networking with other women and seeing so many good ideas? I'm sure coming your way of people just going out there and following their dream?
Absolutely. I think just becoming, I've always had a desire to bring people together. I've always been known as an encourager and that kind of thing. So I think becoming an author and going to vending events and being in different arenas and, trying to figure this whole author thing out, because I didn't grow up saying I'm going to be an author. I was empowered and compelled to be an author. And so as I've been going along these last 2 years since my release of my book, I've just come into different arenas with different men and women. But my desire to do this event was more focused on just saying, hey, we don't have to compete with each other. Because a lot of the time it's like, oh, you see somebody else doing something similar to you. You can't talk to them or you can't share ideas with them because you think they're going to steal your ideas. But it's like my target audience and your target audience is different. We may both be authors, but what I'm trying to do, my purpose, my mission is unique to me. And so is yours to you. So that was kind of, was birthed from me going to different events, seeing different people and, just knowing what it's like to first get started and not know the questions to ask or not know who to go to. So this event was really to bring all of the powerhouses together, women that are on different levels in their businesses and their journeys and their nonprofits, and having people come out who may just be getting started or know they've got this burning desire to do something, but they don't know where to start. So that was really the kind of purpose of the event.
Oh, absolutely. Now, you mentioned being empowered and compelled to become an author. Obviously, your passion from writing was inspired by your children. But when did your actual writing journey begin?
I'm going to say pretty much with this book. I mean, I in my family with the kids with their homework, my oldest is 12. So since he started school, it's funny, we got this running joke in my family, like, don't ask me anything about math. And don't ask my husband anything about English. So the kids know when they're homeschooling and they get to their math part, they're like, all right, mommy, I did everything except for the math. I'm just going to wait for Poppy to get home. And when it comes to anything that has to do with English or reading, they try and take it to him and he like, go find your mom. I'm not doing. So English has definitely been my preference. I enjoy reading articles, anything that I can find to better myself. I wouldn't necessarily have called myself a writer until probably I wrote the book 2 years ago. So I would say it probably definitely started at that point.
Now, how has it been on your journey so far? Because obviously you mentioned you want your children to embrace, obviously, their Hispanic side, their African American side, just being biracial in general. So how has that been taken on, that type of responsibility? Because obviously it's not only representing your children, but there are millions of children around the world who are biracial, who obviously there has been a lack of representation for biracial children and embracing both their sides. How is it now taking on that responsibility as a writer?
It's definitely a weight that I didn't really think about, like going into it. I mean, I always kind of reflect back on, so me and my husband started dating when we were seniors in high school. And at that time, I was just like, we were just like, oh, we dating, we hanging out, whatever. I went off to college. He stayed in Philly. And then we kind of, went forward with our relationship. While I was in college, I had a couple friends that were biracial. And, just being on the college campus, Gettysburg is not really diverse, probably more diverse now than it was then. But I did have, and I still am very close friends with a few people that are biracial. And I remember on campus, them talking about trying to figure out where they fit in, going to, one race, group and not really fitting in there, going to another and still not really feeling like they weren't white enough, they weren't black enough, they weren't Hispanic enough, whatever the case may be. So that always stuck with me. And I think at that point during those 4 years, I kind of started to think about, okay, I we're in a serious relationship. There's a high possibility, I got engaged my junior year of college. We're getting married. Eventually, we're going to have kids. And this is going to be a topic of discussion that, we need to think about. But it wasn't until my kids, my oldest became of school age that it really was like, okay, this is a thing. Once my oldest was school age, we moved out to the county. So it was really like they were the minority. There weren't a lot of kids in the class that looked like them. So there was always like little questions or little things that they would have to deal with as far as, well, what are you? Or some questions. And, as a mother, for my kids to come home and say that a kid told them they don't want to marry them because they're Black, or questioning who they are, that was a journey that I didn't think that I would have to take, a conversation that I didn't think that I would have to have with a 6-year-old, or a 7-year-old.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It definitely has been a journey. I'm grateful that, when things like that happen, it's all in how you react to it. I could have just brushed it off. Me and my husband could have just brushed it off. But each of those opportunities and those moments that happen, we use them as teachable moments, and we tell our kids, like, unfortunately, in the world that we live in, there's going to be people that don't like you or treat you differently for a many of different reasons. Your race or your culture is just one of those things. And just really telling them, like, to be proud of all of who they are. You're Black and you're Rican, and, there's different benefits and pride in both, and they both make you who you are. So it's definitely still a journey. I mean, they still go through things. My oldest, had an incident happen where he was called the N-word at the school. And it's just, it's definitely, things that I didn't have to go through at their age. And I didn't think that I would have to be teaching or telling them these things at this age. So it's been a journey.
Right. And it's crazy you say that, because obviously when you and your husband got married and things like that, you guys didn't expect, walking into these times still having to deal with race issues, with so many, so many prominent Blacks and Latinos who have become successful and have had impacts in their communities. And we still are like fighting these battles, and our kids are fighting the same battles we heard about our parents fighting. You know what I mean? So that I can imagine.
Correct. Crazy. Like you nailed it. Like you would never think that those would be conversations that you would have now, with so much, diversity you see. And we definitely have a long way to go. By no means are we there. Have we arrived? But it's definitely, progressing more. Like there's more even multicultural families represented in movies and things like that. There's more.
Yes.
But yeah, it's still, it's still alive and still going. So
now, obviously, with writers like you coming out now, there's a kudos to the independent book industry, writing world we have out here, that so many people are bringing that representation of biracials, even African Americans, even just Latino stories by Native Americans and Asian communities. They are getting that representation now with the emergence of independent writers. But you have a 12-year-old, so you knew 6 years ago, 10 years ago, how difficult was it to find that representation specifically for your child in so many different ways?
It was definitely difficult. And like I said, the hard part is, there are definitely African American books out there more now than there were before. More now than 6 years ago, but 6 years ago, there still was a struggle just to find a book to talk about minorities in general. Like, you really have to go on a hunt. You can't go to
Right.
the, library out here and find diverse books. It's just not happening. So, it was definitely difficult. And that's why I said, trying to find an article, trying to find something on Facebook that I can find, a group or anything that kind of talks about it, YouTube channels. Like, I did as much searching and research as I could, to try to find something so that they could look at a book and say, okay, I understand. Or, that person looks like me and now I get it. Or, okay, now I know why I should be proud. Or, it's not, because it's different when your parents tell you something. When your parents say something to you, you like, okay, I hear you, but I don't really hear you. So for me to say love yourself for who you are, it's like, what? But if you get a book that says it by somebody else, then you can believe it,
Absolutely. Now you also mentioned your speaking engagements, getting in schools. Obviously, there's so many writers out there who are just entering this journey. So how would you prep them in terms of getting from their book to becoming a speaker? Because that's a big jump. You know what I mean? Obviously, for people who aren't familiar with public speaking and who aren't very comfortable with it, that is a big jump. And it takes a lot of time and practice. So how would you advise someone to prepare from becoming just a writer to becoming obviously a speaker and presenting to not only adults, but to children as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I really think it's really you knowing your product, you knowing what you created, you doing the research on your topic, on whatever you're covering. Like, I feel like I am definitely and have always been the person that loves to be behind the scenes. Like, I will do everything it has to do to prepare for something. But when it comes to presentation day, I'm in the back. I'm behind stage, making sure everybody go out, making sure everybody look good. That's who I am. That's who I am. But, when it came down to this, my passion behind it and my desire for other children to really understand what my children and other multicultural children go through, and for other parents to see, how it affects kids who may not really understand what it means to embrace all of who they are. When it came to me really understanding that and wanting that message to go out, when I went to present to my kids' school, I think it was a total of maybe 500 kids or something like that. And that's not something that I would do. Like, I don't even want to be in front of 10 people. But, when I went, my husband was like, you were so confident. You were so cool. And honestly, it was really like a switch. Like, I was nervous leading up to it. But when I started to do my PowerPoint presentation, because I knew my product, because I knew my passion behind it, because I knew my purpose for why I was there and what message I wanted to portray, I did it seamlessly. I did it effortlessly. And that was my first real big presentation like that. But I can remember that day. And I remember, like, when it was go time, I was ready. So my suggestion would just be to really own what you're presenting, own your work, own your message, do the research. And really, when you know what your purpose is and why you're here, the confidence comes with that. The confidence comes with that. And I think, just practicing, taking the time to really study, what you're presenting, go over your presentation and things like that. And I think, the more you practice and the more you do it, the better speaker you will become.
Now, when was the first time you announced, obviously, to your husband, to your family, that you were going to pursue this journey as an author?
I would say actually it was my husband that really kind of pushed me to do it. I can remember, just getting, was probably incident number 3 or incident number 4 with the kids. And, they had just gone to bed and I was talking to my husband and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I want to do something. Like, I feel like I need to do something to help our kids, but also like to let other kids understand. Cause I can't just show up to the school like, look, my kids are both Black and Rican. Like, back off. I can't do that. I can't be, mama bear up at the school. I can't do that. So I was trying to figure out what I could do. And my husband was like, just write it. Like, write it down. Write it down. Write how you feel. Just write it. And so I sat there on my bed in our room and I had my cell phone and I literally just went. I went to work and I started writing. It wasn't perfect, but it was what I wanted to say. It was how I wanted to say it. So that, initially it was just me and him that, knew about it. And then as I went through my journey, there were key family members that I shared it with, just to kind of get their input along the way. But I would say probably, I published in July of 2018. And it probably took me about a year from start to finish. So I would say probably like September of 2017-ish, a month or 2 in, I started to just kind of get feedback from a few people just to kind of see, what their thought process was. Did it sound right? Was I missing things and that kind of thing?
So how has that journey been since July 2018, since you released this book? How has your journey been, the ups and downs?
It's definitely been it's been a blessing. It has definitely been a blessing. There are definitely, ups and downs. The downs are probably just when you're self-published, you are the marketing, you are the, the publish, like you are everything. All of it. You got to push yourself. You're your manager. You are designing flyers. You are doing it all. So I think that is probably the most difficult part about it, is because I do work full time. And so trying to have my events and vending events and, trying to make sure that I schedule my visits either on days that I'm off from work or switch my schedule around so that I work one day so that I can take off to do it. So, and then just making sure with the following up, you can send a bunch of emails and that's great, but sometimes it takes 1 or 2 more phone calls or 1 or 2 more emails to make sure that you get that booking, so I think that is probably... Listen, it takes time. And I know a lot of people get discouraged, if they get that no the first time or they don't get an answer. Sometimes you got to make 2 and 3 phone calls, leave some messages, show up. You got to mix it up and you got to be persistent with what you want. So that's definitely one of the, downs. The ups, I always talk about the process of writing the book. Like, I was blessed to be able to share with my kids as well as my nieces and my nephew the process of me writing. So when I went from writing to get my first illustration and just, tweaking things. And, I joke about my niece when I got my first printed copy. I took it over to my sister's house and my niece Jasmine, I had them looking through the book. She noticed that one of my Spanish words that was in the book was not in the glossary in the back of the book. So had she not read it and went through that process with me, she would, I would have missed that. So I love the fact that, my kids and my nieces and my nephew were able to see, okay, I had this goal that I set and it took a year. And they saw me through the process, like holidays when I would go to their house. If I was talking to the illustrator and I couldn't quite get something right, they saw me through the process. And then now they're seeing me go to like their schools or their summer camps, and they're seeing me present, and they're seeing my book on Amazon, and they're seeing. So it's like, when you set your mind to doing something, you can reach the goal. It may not be an overnight thing, but if you stay consistent, and you follow through. So I think that's been the biggest reward for me, is really to have have other people see me from start to finish, complete it, get the finished product, and be able to go forward with it. So.
Now during those down moments, like you said, doing all that work, doing everything, you know what I mean? Putting in all that work. What keeps you motivated to keep pushing?
I would say my kids. I would say my desire to want other people to feel empowered. My desire to not want other people, in those moments. Like there was one event that I had, and this was maybe like my second or third read aloud or something. And it was at my niece and nephew's after school program for like the Y. And one of the camp counselors came up to me and was like, "Oh my gosh, I was so moved by your book. Like, I wish that there was something like this out there for me when I was younger," because she was also a biracial individual. So, those moments, when I reflect back on those moments and I think about the impact that it has, and me, reaching that goal, fulfilling that purpose that I had that day when I wrote the book in my room and said, this is why I want to do this. I want to be a voice of encouragement for people who may not have those conversations with their parents, or may not, really, because I have friends who they didn't talk about race growing up. And I feel like your culture and your race is a part of your identity. It's a part of who you are. It's a part of how you act and the things that you do. Those little quirky things that you do come from, who you are. So, when I had those moments, where I reflect back on events and reflect back on people's words and, read reviews on Amazon and that kind of thing, it really kind of pushes me to want to continue to do it, on those hard days, just to think about the people that will be affected and empowered by the book.
Now, your book, entitled "I Refuse to Choose the Best of Both Worlds." So this book takes us on a journey of Maya, who is a happy-go-lucky child born into a loving family with a great mother and a supportive father. Unlike a lot of her classmates, Maya has a different sort of family. One day, Maya becomes upset at school because she feels pressure into making a choice about which of her family's cultures she has to be a part of. So in this book, they follow the story of Maya as she makes important decisions and learns valuable lessons about herself and about how to navigate the world as a proud biracial child. So the first thing I want you to do is just to break down that title for me. I refuse to choose the best of both worlds.
Sure. So just the title, I refuse to choose, sometimes with my kids, with other multicultural or biracial individuals, like I said, friends that I have who may be Black and white or Puerto Rican and Black. Sometimes, being around people, they'll say, well, what are you? Or you can't be both, like choose one. And even when you think about, and I get frustrated every year when I get the reports that the school sends home where you have to check a box to explain what race you are. And, every year that I get it back, autofill, I guess, because it's the first thing that shows up. It says African American. And I'm like, but my kids are both African American and Hispanic. So they should be able to choose both and not be just put into one box. And that's kind of the idea and the message behind it. Like, you don't have to choose one race or the other. You're both. And that's what makes you special. So, you have the best of both worlds. You have both your African American side, you have both and your Hispanic side, or whatever your mix is, just feeling empowered to just say, this is who I am, love me for all of me. And I'm not choosing,
Right.
and that's the stance that she takes in the book. I'm not choosing, I am both. So.
Now some stories are just good. They're good all around stories, and others, they take you somewhere that not many writers can take you to. And I think your story did that. So, and I think you did that by creating the scenario of her having to make that important decision in a school setting, you know what I mean, as a child.
Right.
So, and not many people realize that. I mean, you even as a parent just reading that, and it's like, wow, when you really think about it, like
Right.
that is a heavy decision a child will have to make. So what made
Right.
you choose this specific scenario and situation for your book?
Because it's a very real situation. And I think, sometimes I had a grandparent who was a grandparent of a biracial child. And she was like, I thank you so much for writing this book, because I never thought that my grandchild would have to go through that. But these are things that our kids are thinking, and it could be anything. Like it could be, your child sitting in the classroom and you talk about, the teacher announces we're going on a class trip and the class trip is $50. Well, that child, me as a child, my father didn't have $50 for a period of time.
Absolutely.
I was raised by a single parent. So sitting in class knowing you're not going on a trip because your parent can't afford it, these are decisions that these kids are making. So it's definitely something that, the kids really have to deal with. Like that happens where, in social studies class, that's a very popular thing. They'll say, talk about your culture or bring in a food or bring in a dish. And it's like, well, what do I choose? And there's a part in the book where, she goes home to talk to her mom and her mom's like, girl, what are you upset about? Like, you're both love it. And the daughter's like, I hear what you're saying, mom. And I know for you, it makes sense, but like, I don't get it. What do you want me to, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
And it's a real thing at that age to know and understand, like, what does it mean to embrace all of what is that, So I really wanted it to be a real moment, that one would draw attention for parents, because like I said, I have friends who are now adults and told me like their parents didn't talk about race. Like they grew up in predominantly Black or predominantly white or predominantly Hispanic households, and that is what they were. But there was never any mention of another culture. So I wanted it to be a moment for a child to really understand if they're put in that situation, this is how you can embrace who you are. And also for a parent to really reflect that this might be a real thing for my kid at some point. But if I have this conversation now, I can avoid the heartache and the stress and the anxiety later on down the road.
Right. Absolutely. Now, we touched on this earlier, obviously with the representation of minorities in books, but obviously I'm going to bust out these numbers from the CCBC. They're all over the internet. I see a lot of writers post it. It's the Cooperative Children's Book Center. You know what I mean? So they conducted the survey on diversity in children's book, and based on the 2018 publishing statistics, these surveys showed that 50% of the books display white characters, 27% display animal characters, 10% African American characters, 7% Asian Pacific Islander characters, 5% Latino characters, 1% American Indians and First Nations. What do these numbers mean to you as a children's book author?
Whew, it's sad. It really is. Yeah, I mean, you can't. You can't even say anything else about it. It's just sad because it's like we talked about earlier. Where we are now as a country, the representation of what we see in the media. It definitely has gotten better, but for it to have gotten better, and this is still what the numbers are in 2020, like it's just mind blowing.
Right.
It's mind blowing because we're talking about like, this is who you see every day. These are people when you go into the grocery store, when you go into Walmart, like you're seeing that diversity, you're seeing that, but yet it's not represented in the books that the kids are reading. They're not seeing characters that look like them. So that's all the more reason why, I wanted to create the book. In my book, you will see, when they're on the school bus, you'll see different kids with different, of different races represented in it as well, to just highlight that diversity. And I just definitely think it's so important. I'm blessed to know, over the last year, I've met, I don't even know, 20, Black authors minority authors, and I'm just privileged enough to be in circles with them and to be able to kind of exchange with them and know that the future looks bright, and anybody that I know that is minority or that is trying to publish a children's book. I have a girlfriend that I'm working with now who's working on her book, and I'm like, yes, sis, let's go.
Let's
Like
go,
we
right.
have to. Listen, if they're not going to change it, we doing it. Okay.
Right. Absolutely. Now, how big of an impact do you believe that independent publishing has on these numbers in terms of them being raised?
Not as much as I would like. Not as much as I would like. I think, with independent publishers, because we are the hands and feet of the business, and it's pushing to try and get, your book into bookstores and into libraries. I think it's going to take longer for us to make the dent that we would like to make, but I'm definitely hopeful that it's going to happen. I know that, it may look far-fetched and it may look like it, but I'm very, very hopeful that, more people will be empowered to share their story. More people will hear these numbers and want to make a difference and, and make change. So I'm gonna stay positive about this thing. We're going to increase the numbers. Listen, we have to.
Right.
We
Absolutely.
have to.
Yeah, definitely. Now, going back to the representation of the characters in the books, as an author, and obviously as an independent author, you had all the creative control when you started writing your story, and you did have the opportunity to choose to write about any type of character, any type of race. You also had the opportunity to choose an animal character, because obviously the representation is higher than in that category than minorities. What as a minority author, did you feel an obligation to include that representation of minority characters in your books for those readers?
Definitely. Absolutely. I think the purpose of me writing my book was specifically to obviously target the multicultural community and really to draw attention to that. But in my story, in the classroom setting, you'll see maps in the classroom or not maps, but flags in the classroom to represent other countries and things like that. You will see, like I said, on the school bus, her friends, you'll see that there's diversity in, what is in the book. I also have some Spanish words in the book as well to that with the translation in the back of the book too. So that's a little bonus for you. Get a little Spanish lesson in there. But I definitely wanted to make sure and was definitely intentional about that. My character on the front cover is a lighter version. And I know sometimes people may look at the book and be like, oh, she could have made the character darker. And that's a thing of discussion as well. But at the end of the day, I feel like, minority and African Americans come in different shades. So that was something that I also wanted to highlight in the book as well, just to show that there's different shades, different colors. And diversity was definitely something that was important for me to have represented in the book in so many different ways, to have an interracial couple, to have a biracial child, to have diverse people, to show different countries on a flag, to have a minority bus driver, just to implement it in different ways, to talk about, God, a part of it, the mom encourages the daughter and tells her, like, embrace all of who God created you to be. Like, those were important things that I wanted to make sure that were highlighted in the book, because I know that's not a typical book. You won't, typically find all of that in one book.
Right. Now, yeah, you start out on this journey. You have a great idea. You develop a great story. You have a vision for what you want this book to be. And it's specific because, like you said, you have 3 children who are biracial. You want to empower them. You want to inspire them. And then you want to inspire the world and other children. Take me on a journey of finding your illustrator, because it wasn't just like, hey, here's a cat character I want you to draw. This was specific. You know what I mean? I wanted you wanted a minority, and I wanted the representation. Obviously, you have beautiful representation on the front cover, beautiful representation within as the characters inside the book. So take me on that journey of finding the right illustrator for your story.
Oh man, it was definitely a journey. I want to say I probably went through, I looked at a number of different illustrators. I used a site called Fiverr. So the beauty of this site is you can see the work of different illustrators. You can see what their pricing is, and it allows you to really go through. So, I'm looking for people with top reviews. So I definitely did my homework and did a lot of research before I reached out to the illustrators. But then, I went to one illustrator and explained what I wanted. And my husband looked at it and was like, that is not, that ain't gonna work. So we went through that one. We got to another one. And, they nailed the first, the image that I gave them, the first image I wanted them to portray. But then it was like when it came to the follow-up, it was like crickets. And I'm like, okay, well, this is off to a great start. Like, if I can't get you to comment back to me, then this is not going to work. So I think by, they say third time's the charm. By the third time, I was able to get an illustrator that really, in the beginning, of course, there's always ups and downs. Because the communication is primarily on the computer, right. There's, they're from Sri Lanka. So it's like the language barrier, those types of things that you have to overcome. But I feel like over the course of time, towards the end of the book, it's like, okay, he got it. He know exactly what I want. We got this thing. We rolling. We good. So it definitely was a process. Like I said, I can remember being over, Christmas break. And I'm looking at, page number 7. And I'm like, no, that's not what I meant. We just went through this. That's not. And I'm like Googling and taking pictures of what I'm saying and then sending examples. And so it definitely was a process. And that's just kind of learning, them learning what I want, me learning, the process. And so it took some time, but I think I'm definitely satisfied with the work. My first visit, one of my first visits to the library, I went to them and showed them the book, told them I was an independent author, and I asked them if I could come in and do a read aloud. And, I left the book there for them to review it. And when I went back, I think it was either after I did the read aloud or during the read aloud, the librarian stopped me and was like, I just wanted to tell you, like, your illustrations are so beautiful. Like, they're so colorful and they're just beautiful. And that meant a lot to me because I'm like, I have no idea. But she was just telling me, like, she saw a lot of self-published authors and the illustrations were just subpar. But she just, for a librarian who sees books all day, to tell me that the illustrations were beautiful and that kind of thing just meant a lot to me. So I'm beyond ecstatic about how the book turned out and the illustrations. So definitely.
Now, when you wrote this book, who was your target audience?
I'm going to say those little children in my kid's school was now. I would definitely say elementary school age. Really, I would say probably, 2nd to 5th grade is what I was thinking when it came down to it, because I feel like 2nd, 3rd grade is when my son really started. Or my sons really started coming to me and saying, this is what was said. This is what was said, and, part of me wanted it for children, but I also wanted it to be read to children at a younger age because I felt like, sometimes parents or people only know what they are shown or they only know what they are taught. So if there are parents of the children that my kids go to school with that have these ingrained thinking about people that are different from them. If I can't talk to the parent and be a voice of reason with the parent, then if I could catch the kids at their age, at this age now, and let them change the course of the way their parents think and say, you know what, that may be what my parent thinks, but that's not the way I think. And I know different. You know, this person is my friend, so I'm going to treat them with respect no matter what they look like. So, you know, my goal was second to fifth graders, but I also wanted, you know, if parents were to pick the book up to read it, like I said, that grandmother who read the book to her grandson and said, wow, you know, I never thought about it this way, or I never thought that this would be an issue. You know, having a camp counselor come to me and say, this book was really inspirational for me. So whoever can read it and benefit from it, or just to create a dialogue and an understanding. I've had friends who are school counselors who said it needs to be in every school. Like, the topic is so prevalent in the world that we live in now, like it's necessary. And it's a good segue into the conversation of diversity and inclusion and that kind of thing. Definitely. So anybody who's listening is my...
So I always want to point out authors who are like to the next level in terms of knowing their brand. So now you took it to the next level. You have obviously your book out. You have your website, and then I also see you got the T-shirts and stuff popping. So what about you? What was it that made you think beyond just the book to go out to the other things like the T-shirts and stuff in terms of being a businesswoman?
Right. I really think, you know, when initially thinking about the book, my husband and I were also talking about having a brand and having a business that really kind of, and I call it a lifestyle brand, because we really want to empower through the book, but also through the T-shirts, you know, being walking billboards to let people know, like, you see these cute T-shirts, don't touch my hair, don't touch my curls, you know. I have one shirt that says, I'm not the nanny, because this was my reality when my kids were young. Like, I just was looking at a picture today, going through my Yahoo. My daughter was so fair skinned, like and now she's got more melanin and stuff like that. But when she was younger, she was so fair. When I would push them around, you know, people would be like, oh, is that your daughter? Like, who, you know, or things like that. And it's like, no, I'm not the nanny. Yes, I gave birth to her. Right. Yes, I was in labor. Yes, I got stretch marks. It sure do. Yes. So, you know, we wanted to go beyond just the book. And, you know, so getting the opportunity to speak, you know, I enjoy when I do visits to schools and small group visits, because we can take those moments to engage and do, like, I'll do vision boards or empowerment boards and positive affirmation boards. After I do a reading, you know, with all of the kids, I'll say, you know, repeat after me. I am important. I am smart. I am talented. Like, I am a world changer. I want to just empower in any way, shape, or form. So that's kind of why I wanted to really take it to the next level and provide the, you know, the clothing and the apparel to really kind of go with the brand and, you know, just let people know, you know, be proud of who you are, be proud of who God created you to be.
Now what's next for you?
So I am working on book number 2. That is my next big thing. Book number 2, the book is pretty much written. I'm still kind of going through some things. And I'm working on illustrations now, so finishing that up too. So book number 2 is next. I'm also working with my daughter. She, you know, was inspired and wants to do her own thing. So I'm working with her on her children's book too. So I'm juggling many things in this moment. And still trying to push, you know, I refuse to choose every opportunity I get. Like I said, I had 2 speaking engagements scheduled for May. I've got, I had a vending event coming up too that I was going to attend. So with this pandemic, only God knows when we'll get back to, regularly scheduled programming. But definitely trying to just push out everything that I've got, anything that I have, my message, just really trying to encourage and empower other people to really love all of who they are. And then pull people up and help people along the way. If somebody comes to me and says, hey, Melissa, I've had a number of people reach out to me and say, hey, Melissa, I'm trying to write a children's book. What was your process? Like, I want to be able to be that, voice to be able to say, hey, do it this way. Don't do it that way, because I did it that way and I already made the mistake.
Absolutely.
I made the mistake for you. Don't do what I did. Do this. So I definitely enjoy being able to help other people and see them win as well.
And Mixed Essence is your company. So
correct.
Just break down the title of your company and just break down everything you guys are going to do under that umbrella.
Sure. Yep. So under the umbrella of Mixed Essence, the mission is really to empower other people to embrace all of who they are, regardless of their cultural makeup, their family dynamic. So if you're adopted, if you're, mixed, biracial, multiracial, whatever you are, to really embrace all of who you are. Love yourself. And be confident in who you are. So that's what the business is. And like I said, I call it a lifestyle brand because we want to use tools to empower. So one of the tools under the Mixed Essence umbrella is the book. And that gives us the opportunity to really have conversations. We also last year we called it a diversity, a play on words, diversity gathering, where we had an interracial couple come in. We had one biracial, one multiracial individual come in. And we just asked them questions to share their story and to share their experience. Like, how was it growing up biracial? How was it in their household? And it was nice because although they were both multiracial, both of their experiences were totally different. Right. One person talked about race in their household. The other one didn't really talk about it. And so we just kind of wanted to bring awareness to it. We also talked with an interracial couple to talk about their experience of, raising biracial children and, the difficulties that they face, and just wanting them to be able to, we kind of tied it up, and it's on our YouTube page, Mixed Essence LLC as well. If anybody wanted to check it out, but that also in the end, we did about, I think it was 3 or 4 sessions. And the last one, it kind of was a opportunity for them to really empower the multicultural community and say, hey, if you are, embrace all of who you are, or this was my struggle, so don't do this, or, have that dialogue. Why is it important? One of them was multiracial and she didn't really talk about race growing up. So she feels like she missed out on learning about her cultures as a child. And now as an adult, something she still struggles with because she did not know both sides. And the other multiracial person, he learned about both his cultures as a child, and now he has children that are, I think, three or four different, a mixture of 3 or 4 different races. So he was talking about, how he was able to share his history with them and empower them, and they're little, but how confident they are even as little people because of the confidence that he had as an adult. So just different perspectives on how, talking about your race and talking about your identity, how that affects you as an adult. So definitely, those are the types of things that Mixed Essence does. Our plan also right before school gets started is, and we may have to go virtual because of the pandemic, but we wanted to have a panel very similar to that, but we wanted to have preteens and teenagers to come in and talk about their experiences. Yeah, because my son is 12 now. So to talk about their experiences and, how they handle them. What do you say in those moments? And, I'm grateful because one experience that my son had, like I said, somebody called him the N-word, and the way he handled it, he handled his own. He really did it. I was really proud of him and how he handled it. But somebody else receiving that same word and not knowing who they are or being confident enough to stand up for themselves may have handled it totally different, and that could have affected them for the rest of their life. So I really wanted to have that dialogue, maybe bring a counselor or a therapist in to sit in on a conversation and really give a solid perspective on ways to really deal with your identity and to really just know how to do conflict resolution and how to get through those moments and not internalize it. So those are the types of things that Mixed Essence, to plan for us, some things that we have done and some things that we project to do in the future.
Now, let everybody know where they can find you at, where they can find your books, order some T-shirts, all your information, how they get in contact with you.
Sure. You got it. So for, I start with my website. You could go to www.melissamontero.com. That is where you can get the book as well as the T-shirts. My book is also available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com as well. To stay connected to us, we do have a YouTube channel, Mixed Essence LLC. We are also on Facebook and Instagram. So you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Mixed Essence LLC. And if you want to follow me also, I try and keep updated on my events and things like that are going on. On Instagram, it's melissa.a.montero.
Nice. And this has been Melissa Montero on the Fiction Addiction Podcast. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
No problem. It was a pleasure. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for joining us on the Fiction Addiction Podcast. Make sure you visit fictionaddictionpodcast.com for links on everything we talked about today, as well as awesome resources, additional tips, and Fiction Addiction merchandise.